Hello guys, welcome to my channel. As Nitish Kumar takes vote for the 8th time as Bihar CM, let us understand the Bihar politics from 1900. So to understand the Bihar politics, it has always been on the Bihar politics has always been the caste politics. So to understand this, we need to keep certain things in background. So let us see some of the castes prevalent in Bihar. So the forward caste forming 18% of the population, which includes Brahmins, Bhumihar, Rajput, and Kayasthas. The OBC or EBC composing Yadavas, Kurmis, and Koiris forming 50% of population, while Dalit and Mahadalit plus Muslims forming 16% of the population each. So this is some of the caste prevalent in Bihar. Now we need to keep two things in background. That is, so the Bihar politics has always been the fight between the forward caste and backward caste. And the Bihar politics at that time was mostly dominated by the upper caste, that is Brahmins, Bhumihal, and Rajputs. So due to which the backward caste like Yadavas, Kulmis, and Koiris, they were struggling to hold the political power, which led to clash between the upper caste and backward caste. So let us understand some of the events happening from 1900s. So if we want to understand the Bihar politics, we need to understand what happened in these 100 years. So in 1920s, the JDU movement started, and in 1930s, the Triveni Sangh through socialist leaders like Ram Manohar Lohia, Jayaprakash Narayan, and Karpuri Thakur, and finally to the making of Lalu Prasad Yadav and subsequent rise of Nitish Kumar. So what is this Janayu Andalan? So Janayu Andalan is nothing but the Yadavas, Kurmis, and Koiris Sanskritizing themselves by wearing Brahminical thread, showing to the world that they are equal to the upper caste, and this led to clash between them and upper caste adversaries. Then the later movement found expression in bodies like the Kisan Sabha, Yadava Mahasabha, and Momin Conference. And in 1930s comes the Triveni Sangh. So Triveni Sangh means it is a combination of Yadavas, Koiris, and Kurmis, and it was the first step to consolidate and produce a comprehensive political ideology for the backwards out of the various caste-based legends and myths. And it was first attempt to apply independent political pressure and form an autonomous political party in opposition to the indifference of Congress to upper caste domination. So basically what it means is this Triveni Sangh was the first organization which represented the backwards. Then if we see from 1934 to 1946, not a single person belonging to the lower caste was a member of Bihar Pradesh Congress Committee. So the Brahmins, Rajputs, Bhumihals, and Kayasthas, they commanded over 40% of Congress legislators from 1952 to 1962 and controlled the vote banks of scheduled castes and Muslims. While the Bihar Land Reforms Act of 1950 produced a new class of people from among occupancy tenants, which affected the traditional social pyramid, and this led mostly to patronage networks and caste alliances, with the reins still in the hands of upper castes. So in 1948, the socialists, having broken away from Congress, they decided to target the backward caste agricultural groups to establish their political base. Ram Manohar Lohia, who led this charge, gave the slogan "Pitch the Pave Sav, Main Sat," that is 60% benefits to the backwards, and the socialists have given the pledge, which was popularized by Karpuri Thakur, the emerging socialist leader from Lower Shudra. So now let us see some of the happenings happening from 1965. So in 1965, the socialists led the largest post-independence popular movement in Bihar on the issues of fee increase in education institutions, food crisis, inflation, and corruption of Congress government. And in 1966, the devaluation of rupee, unprecedented inflation, famine, and lawlessness in Bihar So all these events led to dissatisfaction with Congress. So in 1967, the first non-Congress government in Bihar was formed, drawn from different parties. In national elections, the number of Congress scheduled caste MPs is reduced to more than half of the reserved seats, that is 23 out of 45, for the first time, with 13 of the remaining going to Socialist and Communist. And in 1968, the Samvit Sarkar in Bihar falls and is followed by ministries of BP Mandal, the first person from backward caste to become CM, and BP Shastri, the first person from scheduled caste to become CM. And in 1969, midterm elections indicate scheduled castes are continuing to move away from the Congress, so the number of Congress scheduled caste MPs is further reduced to 15. So in the elections held in 1972, after the Bangladesh war, the Congress recovered in Bihar. Also in the early 70s, the Naxalite movement gathered support in Bihar, where it continued till about 1976, even leading the Harijans of the Patna area. This culminated in the early 80s in a Naxalite belt in Bhojpur, Patna, Gaya, and Aurangabad. So the watershed movement was to be the 1974 Jayaprakash Narayan movement, where the seeds of politics of 1980s were sown, which produced almost all of the later political leaders of the 1990s. So Bihar had become the battlefield of the largest nationwide student movement against Indira Gandhi's rule, led by Bihar Chhatra Sangharsh Samiti, fed by popular alienation among the urban middle classes against the Congress and supported by student friends of Jansan and Samyukta Socialist Party. So the movement addressed the dissatisfaction on a gamut of micro and macro issues: galloping inflation, shortage of essentials, unemployment, economic stagnation, student union rights, and representation and outrage against political murders prevalent in Bihar from early 1970s. So despite not being explicitly centered on social questions of caste, this movement provided a boost to the process of shifting of power and proved to be a training ground for the new breed of leaders. 1977, in assembly and national elections after the JP movement and Indira Gandhi's emergency, Congress won no Lok Sabha seats from the Bihar and only 57 out of 324 seats in the state assembly. However, out of these 57, Yadavas for the first time headed the list with 10, edging out the Brahmins 9, followed by the Rajputs 7, Bhumihals 6, and Koiris 4, and Kurmis 2. So in Bihar, Thakur formed the Janata Ministry as Chief Minister. 1978, Thakur implements 25% reservation for the other backward classes in government services and decides to hold panchayat elections, which breaks the dominance of upper castes in local government. 1979, Thakur's government is brought down and Ram Sundar Das replaces him with more than 50% upper caste ministries in his cabinet. 1980, Indira Gandhi back in power, dismissed Das government, and Congress comes back to power in Bihar with 167 seats and 34.17 of the votes. So throughout the 80s, the Congress continued to install upper caste CM, 3 Brahmins, and 2 Thakurs. So during this period, the squabbling and short-lived Janata government and the sympathy factor after Mrs. Gandhi's assassination had overshadowed the question of empowerment of backwards. So therefore, in this period in the Legislative Assembly, the representation of the backwards remained steady without being spectacular. But by the 1990, election, backward empowerment had become the only question. So one of the quotes from Atul Kohli's Democracy and Discontent, India's growing crisis of governability, the turmoil in Bihar was seen as a product of two related but independent struggles: a political struggle for control of state pitting the forward caste against the backward caste, and a socio-economic struggle of the landless lower caste against the landowning forward and backward caste. So it was in such circumstances, after Thakur's removal from the post of leader of opposition, that Lalu Prasad Yadav filled that position, and then the position of Chief Minister of Bihar, which I was to hold for 15 years. And from after 2005, due to some of the scams of Lalu Prasad Yadav, we see the rise of Nitish Kumar. I've understood the context now, so now it is easy for you to understand. Now it is easy for you to understand the Bihar politics. So if you like the content, please like, share, and comment. Thank you.